In the state of Kansas, the Kansas Bureau of Investigations did a statewide census and concluded that on average, someone is sexually assaulted every 7 hours and 48 minutes. This means that at 7 a.m., when you wake up for school, someone was sexually assaulted. It means at 3, before you are even out of school, someone was sexually assaulted. This means at 10 p.m., before you go to bed for the next day, someone was sexually assaulted. This is a gigantic problem, not just in the state, but everywhere else too. Yet, some people have watered down these issues with phrases like, well, she was drunk. Another one that people like to say is, well, she didn't say anything. Now, another phrase people say is, with those slutty clothes, she was asking for it. Now, I'll acknowledge that every person, no matter what gender they are, all of them can be victims to sexual assault. For the purposes of this speech, I will focus solely on women. I believe this issue can be solved. It can be solved through schools, through education. So for the most part, a lot of these assaults, a lot of these instances, and a lot of when people water these instances down, it's because they're not educated enough. They don't know. Now, I believe that schools are the solution to this issue. Now I'll move on to my first point. I'll talk about my own experiences to help this point. I'll tell you what I was taught. I learned about syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, genital warts, HIV, and AIDS. Those STDs and a bunch more. I read all about them in a textbook. I also learned about the male body parts. I also learned about women in pregnancy. I learned how to get a girl pregnant, and I learned how to get a girl not pregnant. I also learned about drugs. I learned specifically about psilocybin, the magic mushroom. I actually had a research project on it. To this day, I remember pretty much 80% of what psilocybin does and how it affects you. But what I don't remember is consent. I don't remember that, and I was never taught the fact that just because a girl doesn't say anything doesn't mean she was not hurt. I was never told or taught that just because a girl wears revealing clothes doesn't mean that she wants to have sex. I never learned and was never told or taught that just because a girl is drunk at a party doesn't mean she's easy. Now, I was taught all of those things all in one. Now, I'll go even further into this issue. I'll tell you all about how we were taught. They split the boys and the girls up. The boys would always go with the male teacher, and the girls would always have a female teacher. Both teachers were always heterosexual. There was no point in whatsoever where they ever said anything about people who are gay, people who are transgender. They never said anything about the LGBTQ community. In fact, my sophomore year, before I got to LHS, and I can honestly say this, and I feel terrible, but I did not know that transgender was a real thing. I was told at my school that it was made up. Now, on my next point, I'm going to talk about what should have been taught and how it should have been taught. Now, yeah, STDs, drugs, pregnancy, female and male anatomy, that all should be taught in sexual education classes. In addition to that, I believe the most important thing that should be taught is consent. It should be taught that people should sympathize for these victims. They shouldn't look for excuses for anyone who does this to them. They should teach you that just because a girl is drunk does not mean that she wants to have sex or she's easy. Just because a girl doesn't say anything after being assaulted by someone doesn't mean that she was not hurt. Case in point, look at the Stanford case. If if any of you have heard about it, you'll know that this woman who went to a party, had fun, she was there for her sister, was taken to a back alley, raped by a dumpster. Now, the entire world knew about it on the news before this girl knew exactly what happened to herself. On the news, she heard that some lady was raped and found being raped behind a dumpster in an alleyway. She knew that was her right then and there. The country knew before her. And guess what the country did? Guess what our society did? They said it was her fault. The judge wanted to exonerate the woman. The judge said that because this girl was drunk and she couldn't fully remember it, there was no point in this case where she could say that this boy raped her. Victim blame. That's the importance of teaching consent. That's the importance of teaching how to sympathize with victims instead of going against them and being hostile towards them. In fact, that's one of the many reasons why they don't say anything. Now, I will talk about how it should have been taught. How this should have been taught was not in separated gender classes, not teaching you just that heterosexuality is the only thing. They should have a person, a teacher who is educated, not just a PE teacher, but a person who is educated specifically to talk about these things, to work with these children, to help tell them the right thing. I also believe that this should not be taught in just 1 week. I think this entire topic, this entire issue that's affecting the entire world, our entire country, and this entire state, and even this town, Florence. I believe that even with all of that, we should have at least a semester to a year-long class on this issue to completely educate people about this. Now, I will also go on to say that they should also teach about gender. They should teach that this society is not just heterosexual, and that even though you may not understand or your personal beliefs may disagree with it, because you live in this country, you must accept people for who they are and celebrate their differences. Because that's what America is all about. Now, I will talk about how this should be done in schools. First, parents need to talk with their children. They need to talk about the uncomfortable things. They need to talk about the birds and the bees. And secondly, people need to support sexual education in public schools. People who go to this school need to petition for it. They need to say, we're not being taught enough, and these things need to happen. These things, like victim blaming, need to stop.